Hey, everybody. Can you believe it? We are on season 7.
Good
Such
a good number, season 7.
Welcome, 7. I love 7.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I'm Larry Little.
And I'm Melissa Jackson.
And here you are on the RelationShifts podcast. Once again, we are back.
We are, and back with such a vengeance and a great conversation today. I can't wait to have this one. It's very timely.
Hey, we've upped our game. There's no doubt about it. For this year, 2026, Robin has said, "Look, you guys, if I'm gonna lead this thing and produce it, we gotta up it. We gotta up the game." And she worked hard, and we have. But we're excited. We have some really cool things to talk about this year, right?
We do. We really do. And as we get started, though, I do need to do a quick check on something.
All right.
I think it's super important when you talk about decluttering, and everybody likes to do that the first of the year, or either you like it or you're kind of challenged or forced to do it. One of those things. But here is the question for you. So I know you guys, you love to decorate for the holidays and things of that nature.
One of us loves to decorate for the holidays.
So here is my question. Have y'all put up the Christmas decorations?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
all right.
just curious.
Clarify here. My wife, Melanie, loves to decorate. She loves to decorate. In all full disclosure, we could have more than one Christmas tree in our house. And so she just, and then she loves to leave it up. Like, leave
it's a lot
it.
Of work.
I mean,
it's a lot of work.
She's like, we put it up. I love Christmas. I'm the kind of guy that, like, here's the thing. Let me just say this really, really fast. If something ever happens and I find myself alone, right? Melanie, something happens to her, right? And I find myself alone. Here's what's going to happen. And I've told her this. I'm calling a company and I'm like, I need a lock. I need a key turn approach here. You come in, here's the stuff, decorate it, right? Leave it up for a week, come back and take it down, and I'm good. Look, come in, maybe 2 weeks, but come in, decorate it all, and I will pay you to do that so I don't have to, and I'll sure pay you to take it down so I don't have to. And then we've had Christmas, and it's good, but not my wife. It's special to her. She still goes through the ornaments. Look at this one. Do you know where we were when we got this? So to answer your question, we did get one tree down. We did get the Christmas down. It is down. Here we are, as we're recording this in the last of January and end of January. And we do have Christmas pretty much down, except we have 2 trees still up.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, you can make them Valentine trees and then Easter trees.
Oh, yeah.
And things
She's got
like
a patriotic tree. It's going to stay up all year, by the way. Just saying.
That's a cool idea. So we're talking about emotional decluttering today. So how do we be mindful and cognizant when we need to emotionally declutter things in our mind and our heart? And what does that look like? How do we do it? How do we make sure when we do that, it's effective and it helps us in some way?
Yeah, I think it's really an important topic. And you'll see that in just a minute when we look at some stats. But I think that so many people struggle with this declutter issue. And it's because it's hard. I mean, there's so many things that go on in our mind and in our heart. So I'm really glad we're talking about this today. But let's talk a little bit more about what are we talking about when we say decluttering, emotional decluttering. What does that mean?
So and let's even think about, how can we translate that? What does it mean? I want to translate it into a question to get us thinking and processing right off the bat. And that is, do you ever feel like you still carry weight from last week, from last month, or maybe even from last year?
Now, just to be clear, we're not talking about weight loss program.
We're not talking about weight loss
from the holiday season.
Sorry. But no, we're not talking about that. So,
okay. All right. Cool.
No, we're talking about the things that, bother you.
Yeah.
We're talking about the things that kind of get triggered, that go on in your heart and your mind. We're talking about things that you're not able to get over, things that you're not able to necessarily work through, or they're just heavy, something that you just constantly carry that's constantly a source of heaviness. It weighs on you.
Mm-hmm. If you really think about it, just stop for a minute and answer that question. Is there something that whenever you see it, whenever you recognize it, whatever, it causes you to just feel heavy, or to feel angry, or to feel sad even, and you're still, it's one thing to have that feeling fly over your head, but it's kind of making a nest there. And so whatever that is, are you still carrying that? Does it need to be decluttered? What are those things? I have things that I can think of right now. If I would let it, and my goal is to keep it flying over, but it would bring me back. It could bring me down, an experience, something that happened, a comment, an action, a behavior, whatever.
Mm-hmm. So when that happens, it really begins to kind of pile up.
Yeah.
And when we talk about decluttering, there's clutter there. So, something begins to pile up and kind of keep you focused on it. And then it begins to disrupt your sleep. It can disrupt your ability to concentrate. It can disrupt your ability to eat well, to do the things that you need to do in order to keep you going and keep you in a healthy state. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, I think emotional decluttering may be the number one thing that steals joy from someone's life and relationship. I've seen it over and over again. I think emotional decluttering and the inability to do that, in other words, allowing that emotional baggage, I think it steals joy from the relationship.
Well, it keeps you stuck. It really keeps you in this mode. And it's so interesting that the more clutter we have, a lot of times the more we focus on it.
Yeah, that's right.
Even if we're trying not to, we begin to kind of hone in and get so focused that it takes our attention. And so it does steal our joy. It steals our concentration. It steals our ability.
Overwhelms us even at times.
To really function the way we want to. So here are some stats. Let's give some stats on some pieces.
Let's do it. So here's why this is important. The Gallup poll said that 4 out of 10 adults wake up in the morning already worrying and carrying stress from the previous days or weeks or months. So 40% wake up with emotional clutter. And then it says that 83% of people carrying stress, if you're carrying that, you experience a physiological discomfort. What I'm talking about, a fatigue, a headache, back pain, neck pain. So we know stress is the killer. We know that. And that clutter causes stress. But I'll tell you, this is the one that really blew me away. Data tells us from the American Psychological Association that 100% of people, when they have clutter, when they have this stress, exhibit negativity bias. What do I mean by negativity bias? What that means is I have this stress, so I see the world from a negative view. My view lens is clouded. It's like cataracts on my eyes emotionally, where everything is cloudy, everything is negative. And we know negativity like that and stress that leads to that negativity is a huge indicator of disease, of relationships breaking up, of shorter lifespan, all kinds of things. When we are we know the danger of stress leading to negativity. My dad used to call it, and he got it from a guy named Zig Ziglar. He used to call it stinking thinking, and stinking thinking is real, and it's really dangerous.
Well, all these things that you were mentioning, I was just tracking it with you. I'm thinking, the sleep. You wake up with stress. Well, you can wake up throughout the night, through the morning, and your mind kicking on and just beginning to focus on something that is causing you stress. And then,
who hasn't woken up in the middle of the night and your brain turn on? And then there you are, laying in bed. You should be resting. Your body needs rest. But nope. I used to say this. We were going through a very difficult time, a very difficult season. And man, we weren't sleeping, and I was up, I was getting very little sleep. And so I just had to figure out a way to, how in the world can I at least call this a name or something, or do something to help me to realize what was going on. And so our mantra kind of began to be, sleep is really overrated. It made us feel bad. Sleep is overrated.
It's for us weak people, right?
That's right.
Oh my goodness.
It was that's a terrible motto, but that's where we were. We finally worked through that, but it's real. This thing that gets on your mind and clutters your mind, it's dangerous.
Yeah. And then physically, you mentioned that stat physically, I think if we all kind of stopped, we could figure out, where do we naturally hold that stress? Is it in our head, a headache, stomach, and is it our neck or shoulders? Somewhere we can identify and be mindful of where we kind of stockpile that. So I want us to talk about, how does that translate? What does that really look like? What does it look like? if we are, emotionally decluttered, how are we responding? What does it look like to ourselves? And what does it look like to others? And the first piece is it looks like we overreact to things.
Yeah, and you're overreacting when the situation is small, that whatever triggers, but your the feeling that you have is this big. Your response is too big for the moment.
Well, I think you lose the scale there because it may be small, but it feels big.
It feels
right?
big, and here's why: you have to realize that what's going on right there is not whatever is going on right there. It's not that event. It's an accumulative thing. In other words, things have piled up. It's one after another. Then all of a sudden we find ourselves overreacting to a situation where if we hadn't had that clutter, we wouldn't have reacted that strongly. But we haven't dealt with the clutter, so we overreact to a situation inappropriately. Too big of a response for the action.
I think things become historical when we overreact. It's not like it's one little thing that we're reacting to. Most of the time people can't see it, but there's like a string of things.
That's right. They build up.
Historical, this happened, or happened, or this happened, this happened. And like you said, we're never, we're decluttered, we're cluttered. We haven't had a chance to really process or get those in a rightful place. And so here's something that looks really small to the person that might be around you, the person that might be the recipient of it. But really, if you knew what was going on, you could see that there's several things.
Right. But think about this, Melissa. What does that do to the relationship? If I overreact when you come to me on the smallest thing and the smallest thing between us, and I overreact at you, what is that going to do? It's going to cause you to step back in the relationship. It's going to cause a polarization of that connection in the relationship, right? Yeah. It's really, and whose responsibility is that? We'll talk about that in a minute, but it's my responsibility to know why I'm overreacting to you. And that's why I think it's the number one, killer of relationships, because, if that causes you immediately to go, I don't want to deal with his overreaction. I don't want to deal with that mess. And I don't blame you.
Yeah. I don't know where the button is. I'm pushing it. Obviously, I don't know what kind of response I'm going to get, which is the second thing, the piece there of communication shutdown. So just like you talked about, it's going to close up conversation, not going to be able to talk, not really going to want to because of the way the response is.
It's just exactly like overreacting, but it's inward reacting. It's an overreaction, by the way, but it's an inward overreaction.
Takes a lot of energy.
So it feels like too much. It's too much. I'm stepping back. I'm not talking about it. I'm not dealing with it. I'm just shutting down. I'm withdrawing. And I think I'm withdrawing to find peace. I'm not. I'm withdrawing because I have too much clutter to deal with what needs to be dealt with. So instead of peace, it continues to spin in my heart, in my head, and it makes the situation worse.
Yeah, and it begins to create that cumulative weight. And again, we're not talking about body weight or anything of that nature, but we're talking about weight of how it feels, and so you get that cumulative, it just begins adding up and adding up.
It does, which brings us to that third thing that we want to talk about, what it looks like, because overreaction, either externally, overreaction internally, which means I'm shutting down, I'm holding on to it, I'm stepping away, I'm not talking about it, I'm carrying it inside, and what that looks like is we can't, even if your head says, you know what, let's start over. Let's start over. Your head says that, but if we don't declutter, we're just going to carry that weight into this new thing that we're trying to start. If we don't know how to declutter, we may want to start over, right?
So you're saying even decluttering, I think about that as changing a habit. It's changing something. Yeah. Just like if you're trying to lose weight, if you don't change some patterns, some ways of doing things, we're going to keep having a struggle there. And so the same with emotions. If we don't set like a new environment, if we don't change things up, if we don't create some new ways of doing things, we're going to go back. We're going to go back and continue that pattern.
Exactly right. And so we have to know how to move forward decluttered. In other words, we have to declutter and then move forward, not move forward and then declutter. You have to get it in the right. So we have to declutter in order to move forward. We can't move forward and then declutter. It doesn't work that way. We just carry it with us. We have to know, and we're going to talk about, we have to know how. So how do you do that? And I want you to think about this. So we all have trash in our life. We all have things, garbage, stuff happens, and stuff happens. It just does. Yeah. And so we have this trash can and beside our heart. And when things happen, we keep putting it in that trash can, putting it in that trash can, putting it in that trash can. You may say, well, I'm going to hide that trash can. And think about your house. If you took a trash can, put it under your sink, and you said, I'm going to hide it. But you kept putting stuff in it, kept putting stuff in it, kept putting stuff in it. And then it began to overflow. It began to fall down underneath the sink and on the floor and in the cabinet. If I walked into your house, it wouldn't take me long. If you had been putting trash for years in a trash can underneath or in an area now in that trash can underneath your sink, you could smell it. I would know it immediately. Wouldn't have to see it, would I? Wouldn't have to see it. I could smell it. So the thing is, how do we, same thing as declutter, that's what it is. How do we declutter? How do we empty our trash can in a healthy way? Now, let me say this. We don't want to empty the trash can onto somebody else. We don't want to keep closing it and building walls around the trash can to keep everybody out. That's not what we want to do. We want to empty it in an appropriate way, in an appropriate place. That's what we want to do.
So let's talk about some shifts. How can we do that? What are some little shifts? Because we want to make this practical. We want this to be something that we can try, we can experiment with. Yep. We can put some action into motion, because little shifts make a big difference. So the first one here is making sure that we shift from carrying everything to carrying what's ours.
Yep, here we go. The first way to empty that trash can is shift from thinking that I am responsible for everyone else. I'm responsible for how you feel. Wow, that's hard, but I've got to get in my mindset. I'm not responsible for your feelings. I'm responsible for how I treat you. I am responsible for what I say. I'm responsible for what I do. I'm not responsible for owning your feelings. Those are your feelings.
And I think sometimes certain personalities lend themselves to owning other people's feelings, or things we've experienced in the past set us up to own other people's feelings. Or moms can feel like they're responsible for everything and they own, everyone's feelings. But truly, that we think we're doing a noble thing, by helping everybody out, by, I've got to make sure everything's okay. I got to make sure everybody's okay. But doing that, we lose sight of taking care of our own self.
We do. And one layer of that is that we do that too because we desperately need the approval of others. So we think we have to do this so that I can get the response from you that I want to get. So I have to own that. And it's really about, I'm going to be responsible for my response. I'm not going to be responsible for how you receive my response. Because if I'm responsible for my response, and it's a response of respect and thoughtfulness and the things that it needs to be when in a relationship, you have to own whether or not, and some of those can be hard conversations. Some of those can be things you don't like or don't agree. But I'll tell you this is truth. I remember very clearly a time in my life when I made this shift to say, I'm going to stop living my life for the approval of others. I'm going to stop. I'm going to choose. It was a choice that I made, a very cognitive choice to say, I'm going to stop seeking I'm going to be honest and respectful and straightforward and clear and caring and compassionate, all those things you can be. But if you don't like me after that, if you don't like my response, if you don't approve of what I'm doing, that's for you to, and it was a game changer for me. I remember clearly making that shift. So that shift, I think, is really important. It's the first thing to choose to say, I'm going to stop being responsible for others' feelings and emotions.
So you made a decision to declutter.
I did.
And your actions had to follow that. So here's another shift from reacting to the past to responding to the present. Shift from reacting to the past to responding to the present.
Yeah, this always happens. I know what it is. It always happens. So therefore, I begin.
Which there's a lot of truth behind that. I mean, there can be a lot of truth behind that.
It is. There's a lot of truth. However, If I continue to make assumptions about what the future is, what the present is, I really take the opportunity away for change, for someone to change, even for myself to change. In other words, an example would be, I always eat sweets, and so I just know that I can't help myself. I always eat it in the past. I've always eating them, and so therefore I've got to eat all these sweets after every meal, even though, just for instance, I'm not, but pretend I'm diabetic and it's bad for me. I've always eaten them, so I've got to continue to eat. No, I have always eaten them in the past, right? But I'm not going to let that drive my behavior in the present. I'm going to choose to do something different. I want to own what I need to choose. This is present. So I'm going to choose to shift and make a change in my eating habits so that I can be more healthy. If I make assumptions based on the past, I'll never shift out of it. I'll never get there. That assumption thing is a killer. It's about, look, the past is the past. And yes, we see patterns of behavior. And yes, we see predictability. I'm not saying that, but I am saying we can't let that have the majority vote.
Well, I think, in some situations that, let's say, he always responds this way. And so like this person is going to know, you get into it, but this person always responds this same way. There's a pattern of behavior there.
Yes.
But to break that, to create a different shift, like you've said, we can control what we can control. And so, you know what? If we know that data, we don't have to need or expect something different. We can go with that data. Then we begin to choose how we're going to shift and how we're going to respond. Because to say the past is the past is so true, but that can be pretty painful. The past is the past. The past keeps coming. It keeps coming up. It keeps getting re-triggered. There's something that keeps getting kind of brought back into the situation or the conversation. And so for some people, it can be hard to get over that because you can say that, but it doesn't really mean anything or change anything. Right. The past keeps playing out. So what do? Well, we know that. How do I accept that, right? And how do I make sure I am not reacting to that, but I am responding, slowing myself down because I want to be different. I want to change. I want to respond differently because it's important for me, myself. How do I make those choices?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. You're brilliant. It's about not allowing our past emotions, even past behavior, to hijack the current conversation. What that means is, I may know, look, you've responded this way 100 times, but we're going to have a conversation in the present. I'm going to give you the opportunity to own your stuff. I'm going to be responsible for how I move forward. Now, I will make decisions on your response. I will make decisions on your behavior. And I'm not saying I don't look at the past and say there's a pattern of behavior here. But if that pattern of behavior here is so dysfunction that I need to make adjustments, that's on me to make adjustments for me and not stay in that pattern of dysfunction, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's about me saying, hey, look, we're going to have a conversation in the present. What you do with that is on you, and what I do with that is on me.
Well, you used the word hijacking. I think it paints such a picture. If we allow ourselves to react to the past, constantly do that, we are allowing that other person to hijack our ability to have ongoing conversation, which we're responsible for our end of that, which is so important to make sure, we stay aware and we do the things, we make the little shifts so that we can change that and we can stay in the present. It's much easier if we can get out of the past and stay in the present and move forward from there. It's less heavy.
And remember, it goes back to number one shift. We are responsible for our behavior, our feelings. Now, if we have a conversation and you choose to stay in the past, that's on you. I'm moving forward. So I think that's what that hijacking the conversation is. I'm not even going to have this conversation because I know how you're going to respond.
Well, I think that leads us to our last shift from holding on to letting go. And I don't want to just blatantly say this. I want to frame it in the manner that letting go, we are valued enough, how we think and how we feel. I'm not saying, over another person or anything of that nature, but how we think and how we feel is valuable and valued. And so therefore we owe it to ourselves to get to a place to work through things so that we can let go. And we can, instead of being so heavy, we can travel light.
Yeah, if it's important, it needs to be validated before you can let it go. If you let it go
Right.
before you validate it,
Well,
you just
you
hide
can't
it.
stay.
You're just
You can't
putting it in
maintain
the
that.
cupboard.
You
Yeah.
can't maintain that.
But if you validate that pain, and if you allow someone to help, I see this, a lot of times with people who have lost loved ones and they just can't let them go. Grandma lost her husband of 70 years or 60 years or whatever, and she continues to go to the graveside year after year after year after year because she cannot let that go. That's a lifetime of her. So she needs someone to help her validate that grief. And everybody grieves in their own time, in their own way. But when we can validate that and say what you had was important, it was significant, it was amazing, that gives her permission to begin the process of letting go. Same thing in a relationship. If I need to talk with you about something that's hurtful for me, talking about it isn't holding on to it. Talking about it is, I'm seeking your validation. I'm seeking for you to validate my pain. Once you validate it for me, once I feel that validation, if you're a significant person in my life, then that lets me know that, okay, she knows it's important, so I can let it go.
So definitely some things for us to think about, some things for us to try and experiment with, some shifts for us to practice so that we can travel lighter. We don't have to be so heavy with the weight. We can make steps to declutter in this new year.
I'm telling you what, we talking about lighter. We need to come up for some air. we went deep, Robin, on this first episode of season 7. Here we go.
But you're going to take us to a different place.
The one thing that our listeners and viewers have asked for over and over again, they clamor for it, they ask for it, they write in, is the dad joke.
Do you have data around that?
Yeah, well, maybe. Subjective data. But we have to keep it going, guys. We have to keep our dad joke going. And I've got a good one today to get us out of here on.
Let's hear a good one.
Ready? Yep, you ready? Okay. Everyone was really excited at the autopsy club. Yeah. It was open mic night. I thought I'd start us off with a bang today.
Just start us off
yes,
that
get
way.
us going. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing a laugh. We hope that some of these shifts will truly make a difference in your life. It's those little shifts that make a difference. Thanks for being here. We look forward to our next episode coming up soon. Take care.
Little shifts that make a big difference. RelationShifts. Little shifts that make a big difference.